Awesome.
Ready to go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Irene Fehr, women's sexuality coach, and this is the first of the Hot Topic series that I'm kicking off. It's a live Q&A series where we get to have conversations about topics that really matter to us that are around sexuality. So body image and health and wellness, menopause, relationships. Some of the topics I'm going to talk about myself, and other times I am bringing in experts, people who really are in the know about these topics. And so today I have an awesome guest. Jeanne Andrus is here to talk about menopause, a topic that is so real for so many of us women, yet is so rarely talked about and so we're rarely given information and guidance, loving guidance on how to live through menopause, but also thrive through menopause. To feel good through menopause, this big change in all of our lives as women that affects us both physically, of course, and emotionally, and even spiritually. So I'm super excited about this topic. And of course, it relates to sex and sexuality because it affects how we feel in our bodies. When we don't feel good in our bodies, it's really hard to then to connect to someone physically when either our bodies feel very different or they feel off, or maybe we're really uncomfortable. So today's conversation is going to be all about understanding all about menopause, what happens physically, what happens emotionally, and how to thrive through it, and how to also connect to your partner through all the changes that are going on in your body and within you. So I'm so excited, Jeanne, to have you here. I'd love to.
I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, a second of our conversations around menopause, sexuality, and sex. Jeanne and I did a conversation last week as well, and we'll provide a link to that conversation in the description of this one. So I hope you watch that one as well. So Jeanne, please introduce yourself and let our viewers know who you are.
I'm Jeanne Andrus, and I'm the menopause guru, and I started my business, which is working with women around the issues of menopause and body image and weight loss. So I help women who are in their midlife years, and we work with changing how they perceive and how they experience menopause, because you can change it physically, but you can also change what you're expecting, what you're going to get out of it, because it's just a different time and we don't have a whole lot of information. So I started my business a few years ago, and as I've realized how much women need around this, I've started writing books. You can see one of my books in the background. This is one of my other books, and my third book comes out on September 1st. So I'm excited. I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, and I'm an author now too.
Awesome. So I want to start with the basics around menopause. So there are different terminologies that we hear. So there's perimenopause, postmenopause, and just plain old menopause. So can you tell us what the difference is between all of those?
So perimenopause actually starts sometime for most women, sometime in their late 30s or early 40s. And it's the time at which you start having what are known as anovulatory cycles. So I get a little science geeky, so shut me up when I get too
I love it.
But what happens is you have a cycle where your body does not actually release an egg, and that means you don't get any progesterone. So you may feel a little difference. You may, if you're very aware of your body, if you feel your ovulations, you might not feel that 1 month, and you might think that's a little weird. Usually you'll go ahead and have a period anyway, and everything will be relatively normal, except if your hormones will start fluctuating. And as you go through your 40s, this happens more and more often. And as it happens more and more often, two of your hormones, one called follicle stimulating hormone and one called luteinizing hormone, start to rise, trying to tell your body, go ahead, produce an egg, let me get pregnant, we need to be procreating here. But your body is out of eggs because women are born with all the eggs they're going to get. And even though that's a really big number, you lose a lot through attrition over your lifetime. So perimenopause is that time from when that starts to happen until you've not had a period in a year. Now, that last year of perimenopause, which is a year without periods, is what doctors would traditionally say was perimenopause. But you don't really know when you've hit menopause until it's been a year without periods. Because some people skip 2, 3, 4 periods. I've known women who've skipped 9 or 10, and then they've had another period and they just go, oh, I thought this was all done.
Yeah.
Because by that time they're ready for it, or they think they just had a baby, but they didn't. And that brings up an important point. You are fertile. Doctors will tell you are fertile up until that year without a period. And I'm sure there have been a few people who've gotten pregnant even beyond that.
Yeah.
But it's really rare after that year. Post-menopause picks up, menopause is that day. It's an anniversary. It's like a birthday party. Have a party. Bake a cake. Be really happy about it, unless of course one of your goals in life was to have a baby, and that is really the last time you will be fertile, really. But then beyond that is postmenopause, and that actually lasts until the end of your life.
Yeah.
So as women, we have childhood, we have our reproductive years, we have pregnancies, which is a really different kind of thing. Then we have perimenopause, and then we have postmenopause. So those are the periods of our lives. The periods of our periods. Sorry.
And so the symptoms that we know most for menopause, so the hot flashes, the hormonal fluctuations, when do those happen in those stages?
Well, perimenopause has a set of symptoms, and they're mostly the symptoms of either low progesterone or estrogen dominance. Now, there's a whole series, and unfortunately, let's see. So that whole series of low progesterone or estrogen dominance. Now, if you're not ovulating, you're not getting the progesterone, so you're still getting the estrogen. So estrogen and progesterone are farther apart more of the month. So the symptoms of estrogen dominance are very similar to that of PMS, which is a place where a lot of women are actually estrogen dominant, but they're only estrogen dominant for a few days of the month, whereas in perimenopause, you're kind of estrogen dominant all along.
All the time.
Then once you stop having periods, or once the periods start going really wonky and you're missing 2 and 3 and 4, then you start getting the symptoms of low estrogen. So those are more like those are the kinds of old age kinds of symptoms that we think about. Hot flashes, dried up skin, osteoporosis, and the loss of vaginal elasticity. So those are the things that happen as we lose estrogen, which is a factor in all of our connective and mucus tissue staying moist. So those are like kind of the things that we know of. And then as your body gets used to being in postmenopause, those things sort of calm down, and you don't have as many. Some women continue to have them, and I usually say that that's because there's a message behind those symptoms.
Yeah. And so how do these hormonal changes affect our sexuality as women as we go through the change?
Okay, so there's really 2 things going on, and really the dropping of estrogen is probably the biggest piece that affects our sexuality. And it affects us in 2 ways. The first is physically, and that's with as I said, the elasticity and the mucous membranes in the vaginal area start to lose that elasticity and the moisture production. So you dry out and you get very rigid, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But your body doesn't expand. So when you're actually in the middle of intercourse, you don't have the lubrication and you don't have the stretch. So you might feel pain. You might just feel dryness. And I've known a lot of women for whom that's a problem, not for them, because they just say, okay, I go get a lubricant. You can use coconut oil. You can use a water-based lubricant. You can use various kinds of lubricants. Some are fun, some are not so, some are just utilitarian.
Yeah.
But guys start to think that they're the problem, that they're the ones that are, that you're not interested in them and they're not getting you wet, and they get all funky about that. I know it's happened in my house where my husband was like, but you used to get, and I'm on my second marriage, and when he came into my life, it was a real romantic and real sexual time for us. And then when this started happening for me fairly late, because I didn't actually go through menopause itself until I was 56. So when I started drying out, he started feeling inadequate to excite me or get me interested because I wasn't getting lubricated. And so we had to have that discussion. And then I got vaginal atrophy, which is the technical name for that loss of elasticity. And it just plain hurt. So we had to devise alternative methods. And actually, those could be quite stimulating, by the way.
Yeah, and fun. And
fun and different. And yeah. So, and there are things you can do about that. I'm not saying, but it does take a little while to work through and make sure that you are now able to take a man in.
And you talked about this, the conversation piece, talking to your partner about this. So what guidance do you have for women in bringing in their partner into what's happening for them, both with the symptoms and then sexually?
Yeah, and I think, and we didn't talk about the other side of the sexuality. I'll get to that in a minute, but
one second. I think I lost your audio.
Okay. Do you have it now?
I have it. You're back. Yes.
Okay. So we didn't talk about the other half. Let's do that first, and then I'll talk about guys. So the other half is that estrogen is also what makes us, and I want to use the word people pleasers, because as women who are bearing children and fairly vulnerable to saber-toothed tigers and other environmental pests, and I'm talking about this because this all developed as we were back in hunter-gatherer days.
Absolutely.
And we needed to bring a tribe together. We needed to work with the other women, and we needed to keep the men involved with us so that they would help us raise these little infants that were totally helpless and kept us fairly helpless, because if you have children, you know how helpless you are in your 9th month. You're just you're pretty, running from a saber-toothed tiger just doesn't work quite so well. So we had this people-pleasing thing, and we got our rewards from cuddling with our infants. We get that oxytocin splash from that, or boost from that. So we feel really good. And so we're really getting rewarded for being social creatures. And that means doing what comes naturally for men, which is sex. And it means that we're involved in that sexual activity, and we're getting oxytocin from that. We're getting oxytocin from being in proximity to our children, and it's great. Yeah. And then we hit menopause, and estrogen drops, and we're not quite so much the people pleasers anymore. And we're not getting the same oxytocin boost because the oxytocin is actually estrogen dependent. There's a dependency in
It's a
the brain.
symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, so you get more of a boost when you're actually still have the estrogen. So now our sexuality is no longer as much tied to this estrogen boost, but it's tied to wanting to be happier in our own lives. And so we get this loss of libido partly from the estrogen drop, but also sort of because the guys are used to just sort of coming in and having you ready and doing it, and that's it.
Yeah.
And now you're a person who has more interest in actually feeling what you're feeling, and that's both emotionally and physically. So at this time of our lives, we need more. We need more from our partners. So that's the conversation you have to have. And it's kind of hard to just sort of come in and slam this on a guy and have him kind of accept it, because I don't know, the guys my age never, I mean, I don't know how they figured out what was going on with us having periods, but since we were barely told what was going to happen to us, right. And they weren't told at all, but they don't really understand how our bodies work, and they don't understand this menopause thing at all. And what they do understand of it is a joke, sort of the typical ditzy woman with hot flashes and mood swings. And they don't really understand that our body is changing and that we need to be able to relate to them in a new way as well. So having the conversation about both sides of this is important, and having them understand that love is the most important thing. And sometimes it means finding a new guy. I mean, I hate to say it, but my first husband did not make it through menopause with me. Yeah. And that can be tough.
Yeah. I mean, menopause feels like a huge shift on so many levels. Like you said, we're getting in touch with who we are and what we really want and what we need, and putting attention here versus before, all out onto society, onto children, onto our partners. And that can also be a very much a psychological shift inside, a new identity.
It's a new identity. It's a new way of thinking. We think during our reproductive years, when we're having periods, we actually think cyclically. In that, with that cycle, our brain actually works differently at different parts of our cycle. And when we get past that, we start thinking more linearly, and it's more like guys think. Interesting, because it can become very threatening for them. And so I think this is one of the reasons that postmenopausal women have always been a threat to men, because we not only do we understand how younger women think, and we still think that way sometimes, but we also now know how they think. Yeah. So it's
I love reading about where the negative connotations around the word crone came from. Whereas before, crone came from the same word as crown, which meant...
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, someone really important and regal. But then it switched to being like an old hag, this old, crippled, evil woman.
Dried up,
right.
Yeah, I just did a speech on this. It was a 5-minute speech, and so I had every word had to be just perfect because I didn't have a lot of time. But the way I talk about it is that in the 1800s, in the 1850s, 2 young men went out to Eastern Europe, and they collected a bunch of tales that were told around the campfires and in the villages. And they created a book, and you know this book because they're the Grimm brothers. And this was really, they brought these tales, which were really horrific, by the way, of old women and being, sort of the witches and all. And this was sort of where we got this whole image. And then Walt Disney, thank you, Walt, not only did young girls a disservice by telling them they needed to wait for their prince to come. The villains in all those movies were menopausal women.
Yeah.
We were losing who we were. And when I bring this up, people are like, wait a minute, you're right. Snow White, it was the stepmother, and she lost her beauty to this young pubescent girl. The stepmother in Cinderella, the older witch, the older fairy in Sleeping Beauty, Cruella de Vil, Ursula the sea hag. All of these are images. And if we decide that we don't want to live with that image, we don't have to.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Because really, I was going to say, really the cool thing about sex after menopause is it does not result in a baby. And that means you're not getting up at 2 a.m. with a baby. And you're not having a baby going off to college when you're 78.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that you bring up this whole body image issue as well. You mentioned, losing your losing your looks and the body changing. And it's such a common knowledge or commonly thought thing is that that older people are not sexual. Like there's this connection in popular thinking that when you lose your looks, you lose your sexuality. But that's incredibly discouraging and disconcerting because it's cutting off our own, like who we are, just discounting that past a certain point in our lives. And I can see how that really affects women in terms of how our bodies change, how we look, weight gain, all that.
Yeah, so weight gain is really a problem for a lot of women because part of this whole thing is a change in the way our bodies are shaped and how much they weigh. And the weight gain, it has to do with muscle loss and losing the ability. Well, you can still build muscle, but it becomes harder and you can still do a lot of stuff. It just takes more work to do that. Yeah. So we tend to gain a little bit of weight every year and it feels horrible and you used to know how to lose weight and it doesn't work the same. So weight gain is a huge thing. But the other thing is, the skin loses its elasticity just like the vagina does. And your hair goes gray and sometimes it thins. And those are some of the things that happen are physical changes. Yeah. And the thing that I think that we forget is that our guys are doing the same thing. I mean, if you're not married to Sean Connery or James Coburn, two of my favorites, your guy is getting a little older. He's not as straight up. My guys have kind of slumps. And maybe they're getting a little pot belly or they're losing their hair and they're getting wrinkled. And the connection is not about attractiveness or in the old traditional sense of gorgeous teenagers. It's all about love. It's all about that connection you make with that person. And that connection really starts, I'm going to say it starts by making that connection with you.
Absolutely.
It starts by being gentle with yourself and saying, it's okay. Because the alternative is not being here at all. Really. I mean, you've got two choices. You're going to get older or you're going to get deader. And personally, I'm still having fun. I'm still, I do a lot of crazy things. Yeah. But I also have sex fairly frequently, and I also have an incredibly loving relationship with a man who loves me dearly. And in fact, okay, I have a pool, I have a privacy fence, I do not have a swimsuit.
Awesome.
So we were out in the pool last night. He doesn't have a swimsuit either. And we were out in the pool last night, and I had said that I was planning to do this diet because my body is not feeling good. It's not that it's not just the weight, it's that I'm not feeling like I'm not feeling real well.
Yeah.
And he said, it doesn't matter to me. Don't do this for me. Don't do this for how you look to me, because you look fabulous to me. As long as you're
beautiful.
As long as you're there in the house, or, because I work at home. As long as you're there when I come home at night, you look fantastic. So that's the way, and it hasn't stopped him from wanting me and being ready for me when I'm ready for him. Now, some guys, I'm not even going to go there, but there are issues for guys too. So we gotta, we have to look at that as well.
Yeah.
But
what I love about what you said about the connection piece and connection to yourself, that's so important, because like you said, these changes are going to happen. We're moving closer to death. And so yes, our bodies are going to change. Hormones are going to change. That's inevitable. But what is, and that's out of our control. But what is in our control is that connection to ourselves, that mindset, that ability to accept ourselves, be gentle with ourselves, and cultivate that connection to ourselves and to each other, which is...
We're really designed to do this.
Yeah.
Menopause is not something that every mammal experiences. It's a list of about 5 or 6 species. Whales being one.
Wow, that's fascinating.
But most mammals will reproduce until they die.
Yeah.
Or until basically their uterus falls out. And that happens. If you are involved at all in animal rescue, you'll see some of these pitiful examples coming out of the puppy mills. And we are designed to go to a certain point and then stop having children. And that gives us really almost, by averages, 3 decades. Yeah. The average age of menopause is 51. The average age of death is 81 for women in the U.S. So you've got 3 decades, which is more than a third of your life, to really do with what you want, to be the person that you want to be. And in relationship to others, as a sexual person, in relationship to becoming an entrepreneur, as many of my friends have done, they've seen that they're tired of the corporate life, and they've gone on and become entrepreneurs or artists or world travelers, or whatever they've done. They've made their choices for themselves, and that's a huge, huge gift that we have that is just really special.
Yeah, and that's certainly true for sex and sexuality too, is using this time and the shift to focus on yourself, to fill up, to also express yourself or open up yourself in a way that hasn't been maybe possible before, or just hadn't been the right time.
Right. Yeah. And, one of the things that sort of saddens me a little is that we are, as a culture, we're getting older as we have children. And it's sort of like, okay, it's going to just extend that time a little bit for you to, so that many women are going into menopause still with children in the house. And
some are even maybe have barely teenagers in the house, with women having children at 40, at 50, you have a 10-year-old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's pretty cool about that is that I think the older children, the older mothers of younger children tend to have gotten to that point that says, you know, I'm just not that into this anymore, especially if it's a second or third child. And they're not quite so much the helicopter hover parents that younger women are. And so I think it allows for some freedom in the kids
Yeah.
and that's really a good thing. I would love to have a free range parent on my hangouts occasionally, just to help talk to women about the way that I was raised and the way that I raised my son, who's now 35. And it's quite a different world.
Beautiful. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, and I want us to maybe switch to the Q&A portion. But before that, I want to give you a chance to share how people can get in touch with you, and also share this incredible thing that you're doing right now.
Okay, so here is my incredibly great sign, because that's right. It's Jeanne, which if you're in any other part of the world is Jeanne, Jeannie, or Jeanne. Don't do that. But if you live in Southeast Louisiana with the Cajuns, they all start calling you Jeanne, and you fall in love with it and you keep it. So that's why it's Jeanne and not Jeanne or Jeannie. At menopause.guru. So if you just drop me a line, that's terrific. But I want to tell you about something I'm doing right now, which is I just released this in the last couple of days, actually in the last 24 hours. And I am doing, starting September 6th, a 21-day, I'm calling it the best 21-day weight loss and health enhancement diet program ever, which is a really long name, but it's a free program that I am offering to 15 women only. It does require a commitment because it's a beta for a more permanent program, but I'm giving you everything in it in terms of helping you get your diet straight, understanding what your hormones are doing, getting your exercise program, all the motivation, a group support group, both online and weekly calls, a couple of seminars that I'm going to be doing, some pre-work that you're going to get. I'm even offering something really, really special, and I bet you've never heard of a diet program that does this. I'm offering a 1-hour call with all the significant others or other adults who live in the house who are trying to understand why they have to live on this diet too, and how they don't really have to if they don't want to. My husband's going on this diet with me. He's going to probably have a few modifications of his own, but the diet is a really, really good one for menopause. So it's a spark your weight loss. It's get back some of the health. It's rebalance some of the hormones, and you can do that with diet and exercise. There's going to be a bunch of stress reduction stuff. There's going to be a bunch of stuff. I am also a level 2 Reiki practitioner, so that gets thrown in there. And so that really, really, really helps. We'll be doing a bunch of self-esteem work. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an intense 21 days. But it's a jumpstart on weight loss. And if I'm not putting out any fancy sales pages, there's no place to go. Just drop me a note, Jeanne or Jeanne at menopause.guru. That looks like that.
Yes.
And if you're interested, the first 15 people to say yes after they know what it is will be the people who are in the program, and it's going to be 21 days of absolute greatness for your health, for your weight loss, for your menopausal identity. And we're going to have so much fun. And there's even a special surprise. I'm not going to go into it tonight, but there's there's a really special bonus for the people who make it all the way through the program, whether they cheat or not. We all know that occasionally cheat.
It sounds like a fabulous program, and I love how it ties in stress reduction and the hormonal balancing, because in the end, it's all about feeling good in our bodies, feeling good
Yes.
About life. And so that's really important. And I love how that all ties together. So I hope.
Exactly.
Oh, well, yeah. So I really encourage you guys to sign up for this program, to contact Jeanne and find out how that can be really good for you.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know me, you can get in touch with me at irenefehr.com. And that's IRENEFEHR.com. Or shoot me a line at ignitedwoman@gmail.com. If you want to ask questions about sex, sexuality, reigniting your libido after menopause or during menopause, and increasing intimacy with your partner. So that's the end of our talking portion. So now let's open it up to our participants on the line. So do you have any questions that you want to ask?
We scared her.
Oh no, we lost a participant. That's okay.
So
is there anything you wanted to add?
I'm just gonna ask you to go into a little bit of the stuff that we talked about last week, because last week we talked a little bit more about the rekindling your sexuality as an individual. And I know what one thing I want to mention before we get there, because it just reminded me, and that is vaginal atrophy. There is a bioidentical cream called estrase cream. It's available with a prescription from your gynecologist, or I think your GP can prescribe it as well. It is not inexpensive, but it does take care of that vaginal atrophy. And after the first couple of weeks, you don't need to use it, but about once a week. So it's not, and it does last a long time. So that is a way to get that feeling back and that elasticity back in your vaginal area. One thing I want to mention about that, even though it might feel good, don't use it as a lubricant during sex, because that will put estrogen into your partner's body. So but you can play with it.
And I want to add to that too. We talked about the symbiotic relationship between estrogen and oxytocin. And I do and teach a practice that's called orgasmic meditation. That is a practice that builds oxytocin in your body. And it's a practice, just really quickly, for those of you who don't know, and most people don't know, it's a sexuality practice where a woman's clitoris is stroked for 15 minutes with no goal. This is not meant to be foreplay. This is not meant to be, it's sexual, but it's not sex. It's not a step towards sex as the goal. And so in the goallessness of that, it's an opportunity for the woman to feel pleasure and to feel that flow of oxytocin in her body, which over time, and this I've seen across the board with myself and with my clients and with other women who do this practice, is that it's a practice that raises our oxytocin levels that then create more moisture, more elasticity, more openness of the body in general. Across the whole body, that then makes sex easier, because you are naturally turned on. You're naturally expanded and open from this practice. And it's a very freeing practice, because it's all about your pleasure as a woman, and not this is pleasure as a step to the goal of sex, which for a lot of women is very, very constricting.
Yeah.
So I
would say that for menopausal women, 20 minutes is probably like a starting point.
Yeah.
Only because it does take more to stimulate the oxytocin.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the receptors in our brain are not as, and I've forgotten whether this is one of those things where the receptors don't take it in as easily, or whether it's that it doesn't get produced as easily.
Yeah.
But we've also lost, in most cases, we've lost that opportunity to have small children hugging us and hanging off our necks, and even nursing, which gives us that oxytocin boost. And I saw a wonderful oxytocin boost for you these days.
Yes.
That gorgeous kitty that you've been.
Yes.
And I will admit that having animals does give you that boost to some extent. So they're really good to have around.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
ones that like to be petted.
Yeah. Yes, I have a very, very beautiful pussy here who is very, very keen on being petted and touched. And so, yes, it's been very interesting. Pun intended, of course.
Yes. And I was going to say the other thing that I found for me, because my first marriage broke up over depression and lack of sex and lack of a whole bunch of things, but depression and lack of sex were absolutely parts of that. And so when I stepped out of my marriage, I had not been really touched in quite a while, and I was really almost touch phobic. And I strongly recommend massage therapy as just being in the presence of somebody whose job it is to make you feel good in your skin. And even if you're just starting with chair massage or scalp massage and moving into more whole body massage.
Something that's taking off in major metropolitan areas, at least right now, across the US, is cuddle therapy. So actually hiring someone to cuddle with you and provide that touch. This is non-sexual touch. This is not someone that you even need to know. Mm-hmm. And it is about receiving that touch, or just even being held, like held firmly for an extended period of time. That's really important. And lack of touch creates real depletion, physical and emotional, which then makes, like, we fall below a threshold, which then makes being turned on really hard, because you're coming from here as opposed to, that kind of zero baseline.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. My headphones just said I have to charge. So hopefully, can you still hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Okay. So I was going to say, if you don't have that available to you, because I haven't heard of it here in New Orleans, which is not a major metropolitan area, but almost every small town, large town, whatever has
a massage therapist. Yeah.
No, an animal shelter, and the animals actually. I'm big on pets, but really, you can fulfill your need for touch by going and working in the kitten room to socialize kittens, or with puppies, or whatever, and you can get a lot of that feedback that you need just by being with those kinds of animals. And it's a good start. It's not as good as a guy. It's not as good as a lover, but it can really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or nurseries.
Yes.
Yeah, volunteer in the nursery of any church. And even if you're not a member of the church, they'll love to have you volunteer in the nursery, and you can go and hold babies.
Yeah.
And give them back.
Yes. Awesome. Well, I wanted to also, you talked about sex after menopause, and I wanted to just maybe wrap up with this little fact that our clitoris grows in size as we age, which actually actually makes our orgasmic potential bigger. And so there is this, again, these cultural notions that our sexuality diminishes, and for some that may be true, but overall, it actually, the thinking of menopause as that opportunity to step into and claim your power, your sexual power, and the fact that the body actually, that the surface area and the area that has the nerves grows with age, tells us that we have actually an opportunity to have the best sex of our lives.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. So not only the body, but also like I just lost that word, the thought. It's like having conscious sex, not sex for relationship, not sex to make babies, not sex to please your partner, but to have the kind of sex that's just plain old wonderful and enjoyable, and with our bodies actually making that possible. So
that's really awesome.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about having this conversation, and in talking some of the truth that's really out there and that's happening, and giving women and men the tools to move through this huge change and to thrive, not just to moderate the symptoms, but to thrive during this time.
Yeah. So I just want to say that it's so, take the time to be available to yourself and spend some time with your body, getting to know this different body. If you're unhappy with your body, if you want to make those changes in your health or your weight, talk to me about it. That's what this program's coming out here for. If you're having issues with sexuality, that's why Irene is here.
Yes.
It's like sooner or later we're going to have to do a retreat together.
I would love that. Yeah, there's just so much symbiosis here, and so much,
there's just so much.
And I love working with you. So
awesome. It's terrific. So if you have questions for either of us, Irene's going to send this out to her list. I'm going to send it out to my list. Please feel free to email either of us. And if it's a question that really belongs with the other one, we'll make sure that you get the answer you need.
Yeah, I definitely want you to get the answers that you need, and do ask, because that's the first step, is asking for what you need and asking for guidance. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Jeanne, for being here, for giving us all this amazing information, and for the work that you're doing. And thanks for joining us. It's been really awesome.
It's been awesome. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.